Fantastic. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, Workplace Charging for Small Businesses. Today, our presenters are from EVNoire and High Tech Electric. Next slide, please. This is a quick look at today's agenda. First, we'll hear about best workplaces for commuters. We'll hear a bit about the EVAL program. I'll introduce today's speakers, and then we'll go into workplace charging for small businesses. And of course, we love questions, so please put those in the Q&A chat box. We'll address them at the end of this session. Next slide, please. So first off, a bit about best workplaces for commuters. This is the only program of its kind with national recognition for organizations, including higher education institutions and sites, for providing progressive transportation benefits to their commuters. 2024 was a record-breaking year for total members, indicating a growing movement. Commuters are asking for transportation benefits, and employers that provide these benefits have a competitive edge to their peers when attracting and retaining talent. Workplaces are also playing a key role in supporting transportation demand management, or TDM, by encouraging their employees to take advantage of TDM options and by providing subsidized access to transit, carpool, and other TDM amenities. Next slide, please. Best Workplaces has partnered with Forth to promote the EVAL program and workplace commuting options while providing recognition. Forth's mission is to electrify transportation by bringing people together to create solutions that reduce pollution and barriers to access. You'll learn more about the EVAL program today. Next slide, please. Now, I'd love to introduce our speakers for today. Brandon Smith is a dynamic leader who is passionate about contemporary technology, electrification, and decarbonization. Brandon has worked with urban mobility, vehicle sharing, electric vehicles, electric vehicle infrastructure, and autonomous vehicles for 8 years. He's been involved with large companies like General Motors and early-stage startups. Brandon is an advocate for equitable EV adoption, and through his work in the electrification and decarbonization industry, Brandon strives to create a future in which all voices are heard so that all may benefit. Alexis Benedict is an accomplished professional with extensive experience in sustainability, operations management, and renewable energy. With a diverse background spanning multiple leadership roles, she has consistently driven impactful projects and initiatives that align with environmental goals and business growth. In her current role as Sustainability and Operations Manager at High Tech Electric, Alexis leads efforts to advance workplace charging programs and electric vehicle initiatives. She has been instrumental in implementing and expanding EV infrastructure, positioning the company as a leader in sustainable transportation and corporate environmental responsibility. Alexis also played a pivotal role in enhancing the company's performance in corporate social responsibility and sustainability metrics. And with that, I'd love to hand it over to Brandon Smith from EVNoire.
Hello, thank you very much, Michael. My name is Brandon Smith again, and I represent EVNoire here. We're a full-service consultancy in the e-mobility space, the autonomous mobility space, and multimodal transportation, working on a lot of research projects, government works in terms of policies, and really helping the nation and now, worldwide to transition over to electrification. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about workplace charging. If we can go to the next slide, please. So workplace charging, right? Like what is workplace charging? It's as simple as that. Charging at a workplace. Specifically, the programs I'm going to be talking about today have to do with employees or the workers at that workplace, and less a fleet conversation, but there's also some room for fleet in there as well. If you can please flip to the next slide, please. So what are some of the benefits of workplace charging? Again, this is not charging at your house. We all know that, if you live in a multifamily dwelling, or if you don't have access to charging within your commuter route, charging your electric vehicle might prove difficult for you. So workplace charging is really kind of that third frontier, something to really help to develop equity within this electrification transition. So when workplaces actually transition to electrification and have electrification benefits for their employees, they have happier employees, right? As we start to move into the future and electrification it's an inevitability at this point. You're going to start to see this as an expected amenity, not necessarily a luxury for employees, but if you want to retain that high talent or you want to attract that high worth talent, you're going to want to have electrification and things that make electrification easier for them, especially if they're employees that don't live in areas that have traditional access to electrification that is easy. There's also, a marketing benefit for it, right? If you're an electric company or a company that is really focused on electrification, you can really boast that you are a leader. You have a sustainability focus, and obviously we all have a lot of sustainability goals these days. This can also help you to reach those sustainability goals. And again, one of the huge, besides all the obvious benefits like the air quality and all of the things that we already kind of know about, again, I want to really focus on the justice aspect. So for so many employees, not having charging at a workplace or on a commuter route really stops them from being able to adopt electric vehicles. So having workplace charging really does allow that. And in some of the studies that we've actually looked at, we see that 60% of an employee surveyed actually need this kind of charging at their workplace for them to realistically adopt an electric vehicle. And we can please switch to the next slide. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about the Charge at Work program. This is a national Department of Energy funded program. So we're doing this all throughout the nation, and it's to advance workplace charging and really engage with public officials, workplaces, groups, organizations to kind of serve as a concierge. Next service, please. Next slide, please. And so how specifically the Charge at Work program functions is that, again, we're kind of like a concierge. So this program, I like to tell you just up front, we don't offer money directly through this program. However, through our work with this program, we do help to try to connect you with whatever incentives there are federally, on a state level, locally, private incentives. So we really try to help, again, as that concierge service, to connect you with those. But two of the biggest benefits of this program, one is that this program offers a free site assessment. So we know that quite a few utilities offer site assessment. And what a site assessment is, hey, I have a building, I'm a business owner, whether small, medium, large. I want to think about electrifying this building in terms of providing transportation electrification and charging stations. How do I even get started? Maybe you're at the medium level, maybe you're 10 years ahead of the game, maybe you're just getting started. But we can help to get you from either point zero or wherever you are on your program plan to actually get to implementation. So whether that's trying to figure out what kind of chargers you need, do I need level 2 chargers? Do I need level 3 chargers? How much conduit do I need to run? Where should I place the chargers? What type of chargers should I have? Should I get network chargers? Should I not get network chargers? Can I mix these kind of charging stations with both fleet, public use, and for my workers? We can help to answer all those questions and help you to develop a unique plan. That's kind of the site assessment there. So again, really great benefit of this. If you have multiple locations, we can provide site assessment for multiple locations. And then we move on to helping you with the plan. So we offer a project builder tool. And that project builder tool is a program management tool. And I'll show you a little bit more about that on the next slide, please. So this project builder tool, again, project management tool, really robust tool. Not too different than other project builder tools that you've seen, but this has a specific focus on workplace charging. So again, you can see what type of chargers you would like to use. Who are the implementation partners? What's my CapEx cost? So what's my OpEx cost? How long? You can plan out a timeline, and you can wrap up all these things into nice, beautiful graphs that you can bring to other stakeholders, other decision makers within your organization, or just kind of play around with the different variables yourself so you can make some really informed decisions to, again, get from zero, not knowing what to do, to actually implementing charging infrastructure. If you can please switch to the next slide. So again, this is the Charge at Work program. I just want to reiterate kind of what this program offers. So we serve as a concierge to really help you get through electrification. We work with schools, businesses, organizations, governments of all sizes. So nobody is really prohibited from this program as long as you're not a home office building or a home office business. And I'll give you kind of an example. EVNoire is a fully remote company. We have no physical infrastructure. And we were even able to kind of use this program to help with some of our electrification efforts. And we have other programs that we're going to work on that I'm going to tell you about a little bit later that don't require you to be a specific type of business. So this is open to everybody. I implore you, if you have questions, even if you think this might not be for you, please reach out to us. We can at least connect you with either this program or other programs that might really help you in your electrification goals. So again, we offer the free site assessment. We offer the project builder tool and technical assistance throughout this entire process to really help you get from ground zero to actually implementing some charging infrastructure. So this is the Charge at Work program. You can find us at chargeatwork.com. And again, I'll put my information at the end of this presentation. So if you have any questions, you can actually reach out to me offline as well. The next thing I want to talk to you about is the sister program of this Charge at Work program. So I'm really excited to introduce the Electric Vehicle Adoption Leadership Program. It's the EVAL program for short. And what this is again, it's a National Department of Energy funded program. This is facilitated by Fourth. And it's a certification program that provides technical assistance and recognition to organizations, businesses, governments, small, medium, and large, again, that support the adoption of clean transportation. So this certification indicates the availability of clean transportation options and opportunities for staff at a workplace. So again, this program is focused on the workers at a workplace, not necessarily the fleet work that's been done, unless there is some kind of mixing of the use there. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. If we can please switch to the next slide. So again, the objectives of the EVAL program are to execute a nationwide workplace charging program consisting of education, outreach, and technical assistance activities that enable large-scale increase in workplace charging. And both of these programs that we're working on, I have nothing to sell you right now. I just want to build this industry. That's why the Department of Energy has actually pumped all this money into it. We want to show demand. We want to help people get charging infrastructure built, and we want to show that there's demand for this type of funding and these type of programs. So these programs currently are free, and they are to certify 5,000 workplaces. So with this EVAL program, we want to certify 5,000 workplaces. That's not necessarily 5,000 businesses, right? That's already a daunting goal for 5,000 work sites. So for example, Harvard University has signed on, and that's really cool, I think. But they have multiple sites within their organization, and each one of those sites is considered towards this 5,000 goal. And another one of our goals is that we want to catalyze 20,000 ports. So that's like, 4 ports for each one of these 5,000 places. We really want to develop the industry. And if you drive an electric vehicle or you know about the industry, which I'm assuming a lot of you on this call do, you know that the charging infrastructure is one of the biggest things that we need to increase to really have large-scale EV adoption. So all that's to say, the Electric Vehicle Adoption Leadership Program really does help to certify organizations and recognize organizations for the efforts that they've been putting towards clean transportation. Next slide, please. So who is eligible for this EVAL program? So again, I'll give you kind of my little spiel here. EVNoire, completely remote company. We were certified for this program as well, even without having physical infrastructure. I'm working with a bank in Washington, D.C. They do have some electric vehicle infrastructure, but we're also recognizing them for their electric shoe shine machines. So this has a very broad application of who can be eligible for this. So again, employers from all industries and sizes are eligible, including state, local, or tribal governments, community-based organizations, and nonprofits are eligible to apply. The only exclusions are if you're a home office organization or providing fleet charging only and not for the actual workers of your organization. So that's kind of the only eligibility restraints there. Other than that, pretty much any organization is going to be eligible for this. Next slide, please. So I'll drill down a little bit more to how the certification process works. So again, next slide, please, sorry. So for the certification process, it's pretty straightforward. You answer a 15 to 20 minute questionnaire. It might take you a little shorter than that if you're fast on the computer, and ask questions just generally about what kind of incentives you have for electrification. Are you giving metro or public transportation passes and incentivizing charging on a monthly basis for your employees? Do you subsidize car payments for electric vehicles for your employees? Do you have 100 chargers for your employees to use and then they switch to public charging in the evening? What kind of efforts are you putting towards transportation electrification? And believe me, we've had some pretty interesting use cases. So I don't think that any effort is really off the table here. So we'd love to hear any of your kind of unique situations for your workplace. But obviously some of the most common things are, hey, we have some electric vehicle chargers at our workplace for our employees. So you'll fill out this questionnaire, and based on that questionnaire, you'll receive points back. And based upon those points, you'll receive a certification. During this process, obviously, you can connect with us for technical assistance. We can provide you, again, connections through the Charge at Work program for other things that you might have questions for. But with the certification, it's a pretty straightforward process. 15, 20-minute questionnaire, you get points back, and I'll explain to you a little bit more about the points on the next slide, please. So you have 4 certification tiers, and you're able to gain these again by filling out that questionnaire. You receive your points, and you receive either a bronze, silver, gold, or platinum tier certification. To give you kind of context here, EVNoire, no infrastructure whatsoever physically, we were able to receive a bronze certification. And you have some organizations that have installed all kind of things. We have a hotel in Connecticut that is literally zero emissions throughout the entire hotel. We have organizations that are getting certified platinum, and based upon this certification, we're able to actually do some case studies, some additional marketing and promotion, which again is for free for these organizations, because we are all about bolstering this industry and showing that there is demand and really recognizing organizations at any level, but definitely those platinum level organizations for their efforts towards transportation electrification. Next slide, please. And again, I gave you the example of Harvard University earlier. So they had multiple sites that they wanted to get certified. I don't want you to necessarily have to go in and have to certify each one of your buildings. So we do provide a multiple work site certification process through the website, evalcertification.org, which just kind of expedites some of that work that you have to do there. Next slide, please. So here's the question everybody wants to know. So currently, this program is completely free. We've been doing this program now for about a year, and through this year, it's been completely free. So November 1st, the program will start to cost. It's a small fee. It's really not crazy like some of the other certifications that you might see out there. I won't mention any in particular, but this will not be a large fee. So I do implore you, if you are interested in this at all, please connect with us, within the next month while the program is completely free. Best Workplaces for Commuters will also give discounts to some of their members. There are going to be some deep discounts for this program. It's really cheap. We want to make it a low barrier of entry for people to come on. But again, before November 1st, these programs are completely free. The Charge at Work program remains free, and the EVAL program will be free until November 1st. But right now, it's completely free certification. And when you sign on, regardless of when you sign on, it is a lifetime certification. So you don't have to recertify. If you want to recertify later and get a higher tier because you've done more work, then you'll deal with the fee at that point. But if you certify right now, you don't have to recertify in 2025, 2026, you're good to go. So that's how much it costs. If you have any other questions about that, I want to talk more in depth about that, please let me know. I can answer questions about that. Next slide, please. So these are just some of the organizations that we've gotten on. Hey, EVNoire, we're sitting right there. You see Plug in America. A lot of great organizations have come on. Governments, we're actually seeing a lot of schools, a lot of high schools and a lot of colleges sign on now, which is really cool to see them come on. But these are just some of the organizations that have come on. Obviously, we can't fit them all on the screen right now. We probably can update this. Like I said, Harvard University's on there. I find that to be personally really cool. But a lot of organizations, governments, and businesses are actually joining on with that. Next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about the Charge at Work program. That again is the chargeatwork.org. And here with evalcertification.org is the website for the eval certification. We have this Best Workplaces for Commuters webinar that we're doing. We're doing a series of these. So if you're continue to have interest or you have interest in any specific organizations, we're going to be doing a workplace charging for government seminar on the 12th and another webinar on the 19th for transportation management associations. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Our information will be all over the place for both the Charge at Work program and the EVAL program. Again, chargeatwork.org and evalcertification.org. We're actually going to leave questions to the end. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or you can ask them at the end. For right now, I actually want to pass off to my colleague, Alexis Benedict, who's going to actually talk to you about how organizations are actually implementing workplace charging in the real world. Alexis, please take it away.
Hello, good afternoon. Again, as Brandon said, my name is Alexis Benedict. I'm the Sustainability and Operations Manager at High Tech Electric. And I'm really excited to share a little bit about our journey in deploying EVSE, but also how we've helped a lot of other businesses, small and large, deploy EVSE and their workplace charging programs. So why workplace charging? I want to start by kind of setting the scene. Just like Brandon said, as more and more people start to transition to electric vehicles, it is an inevitability at this point. Workplace charging is going to become a more essential amenity. And if you can get in the game kind of early, it can really set your organization apart from the jump. For employees, it's a convenience that they can charge at work and they don't have to pay for the electricity at home. It also alleviates the headache of maybe getting, most of the way to where you're going and running out of battery, or there's a lot of kind of worry about that right now. And having a place to charge at work where your car is going to be for 8 hours a day anyway makes a huge difference for a lot of employees who are looking to make that jump. And for employers, it's a way to reduce your GHG emissions, and also bring awareness to corporate sustainability, responsibility, and that reporting. As small and medium-sized enterprises, that in a lot of areas is not necessarily regulatory or a law right now, that you report on those things, but that is definitely coming for small and medium-sized enterprises. And I think that it is something that everyone is jumping on the bandwagon early, so that we're all prepared when it is a requirement, right? And also, we want to demonstrate that we are committed to our sustainability initiatives and really set ourselves apart as employers in that sense as well. And I know that a lot of smaller employers can think that it feels like a really big leap, but in reality, it can be a very manageable and impactful step towards a greener future. Next slide, please. So in the planning stage, there are 3 kind of critical elements that you really want to focus on. The location of your charging equipment is crucial. You want to consider factors like accessibility, visibility, and the proximity to your existing electrical infrastructure. The goal of this is to make your charging convenient for your users, but also minimize your installation costs. The next thing that you really want to take into consideration is the equipment that's right for your business. This will include on deciding on the right types of chargers. So again, like Brandon said, whether you want networked or not networked chargers, if you need a level 2 or a level 3 charger, it will also make sure that the chargers are compatible with the vehicles that you expect to serve. So you want to keep in mind when you're looking at those two, if you want to be able to collect revenue from public charging, if you want to be able to collect revenue and allow your employees to charge for free, and really just how much flexibility you're looking for in being able to collect revenue from your chargers. Some equipment will do that on its own, right out of the box. It can be commissioned to do that. Some equipment is what they call software agnostic. And that means that you can put lots of different types of software on there to help you manage the maintenance, to look at the usage of the charger, to collect revenue from the charger. So those are all things that you want to take into account when looking for equipment. And finally, you want to assess your site's service size. It's essential to ensure that your current electrical service can handle the additional load that you're putting in from the chargers. And if upgrades are needed, it's essential that we plan for them early in the process. Next slide, please. All right, so the actual nitty-gritty, the steps to deploying your electric vehicle charging equipment. So that first step that we just talked about is you really want to make sure that you plan your project out thoroughly before you start. So this will include setting clear goals, determining what you want your budget to look like, how much money you have to spend at this, and identifying key stakeholders in your company. This can be the people, your employees. There may be financial decision makers, property owners. This also can be obviously the employees that are going to be involved in using these chargers. We have found that a really great best practice is to identify one person or a small group of people in your company that are really excited about workplace charging. Maybe they drive electric vehicles, or they've been waiting to buy an electric vehicle until their work is offering charging or something like that, and setting those people as the champion of your workplace charging program. This will be a person that you go to with questions. You want to involve them in the decision-making parts of the process, and you really want to get their feedback throughout the entire process, because again, they're speaking for the people who are going to be using the chargers, and their feedback is going to be invaluable to you throughout this whole process. The next step would be you want to get your utility company involved in the project very early on. Engaging with your utility provider from the start of your project will help ensure that your site has the necessary electrical capacity. And again, that any grid upgrades that you do have to make are planned well in advance so that you know ahead of time and you don't get to, the last stages of your project where you're ready to install and now your budget was way off because you have to spend thousands of dollars on expensive electrical upgrades that you weren't planning on. Your utility will come out, they'll make a site visit, and they will help you make a plan on what is best suited for your property and your company. And after that, once the utility is on board, you'll move forward with creating a detailed site plan. Again, this will map out the precise locations for your chargers. They will take into account the accessibility of your chargers, visibility, and the proximity to your power sources. There are lots of companies out there that will create site plans for you, engineered and stamped site plans specifically for EVs. Most regular site plan companies have gotten on board with doing that as well. All of these things are things that your installer will help you with. You will choose, an electrician to install your chargers for you. But these are things that you still want to think about maybe before selecting an installer, questions that you may want to ask ahead of time, again, to make a plan, to have a timeline, to have a budget before you decide on who your installer is. Sometimes those things can be very helpful. So then once you have site plans, your installer will apply for permits. And this step can take a little bit of time depending on if you're installing the smaller level 2 chargers or if you're installing a large level 3 or DC fast charger that will take up a lot of power. So you just want to start that process early and just to try to avoid any delays in your project timeline. Once you get those back, you can proceed with the installation. Your installer will run electrical conduits, set up the charging station, and make sure that everything is installed according to the site plans. And then once that's done, your county or state, depending on where you live in your jurisdiction, will conduct thorough inspections to make sure that everything meets safety and code requirements. And then that step is the final approval that you need to start using your chargers. Next slide, please. Perfect. So once you have a plan in place, you want to think about what that timeline is going to look like so that you can really decide when you need to do certain steps. So obviously planning is step number 1, and then getting your utility involved is step number 2. After that, things can kind of go in different orders depending on your company. You may want to order equipment right away once you've worked with your utility and it's decided on an installer. Equipment can take some time to ship. If it's a level 2 charger, sometimes they'll have them in stock. Those can take 7 to 14 days typically to ship out. Again, this is all depending on where you live. And then level 3 chargers can take anywhere from 4 weeks all the way up to 3 months to ship, again, depending on where you live and the type of equipment that you're looking to order. So you just want to take that into account early in your project. Site plans, depending on the equipment that you're installing, can take, 0 days if they're not required. If you have a smaller service size and you're only installing a level 2 charger, if you need engineered stamped plans, they can take, up to a week to come back. Same thing with permits. If you have a smaller project, you may get your permit back in a week or less. If you have larger projects, maybe, it could take 3 to 4 weeks to get those permits back and go through that review process, again, depending on where you live. The last thing that you really want to take into account with your timeline is that electrical installers, especially during the summertime, tend to be very busy, and our schedules can be 2 to 3 weeks out. I know, especially in Michigan right now, if you call any electrical installer, they're going to tell you, yep, I can get you on the schedule in 2 weeks. So you just want to take that into account. You don't want to get all the way in and be ready to install and then call your installer and have them tell you that it's going to take 2 to 3 more weeks. So just things to keep in mind. Next slide, please. All right, a couple of key considerations that we've noticed both with installing our equipment and helping other people install equipment. you want to take into account your budget and funding. You want to make sure that you understand all of the costs that are involved in your chargers. So you'll have upfront installation costs, but then also you want to think about ongoing maintenance of the charger, if it breaks or anything happens to it, if it stops working, what that looks like for you, and also potential software subscriptions. So again, some of this equipment will come and you'll just be able to collect revenue or manage your charging, things like that. And some of this equipment will have a separate software program that you will either purchase once or you will pay for monthly that helps you track all of those things. Each charger is kind of different in that sense. Permitting and compliance are also crucial. You just want to make sure that you're aware of your local regulations and utility company requirements. I know here in Michigan, they're very different than they are in California, for instance. So that's just something that, again, when you're looking at a timeline and looking at your project, you want to take into account early. And the last thing that you really want to think about is scalability. So your needs today as a company might be kind of small, but as EV adoption grows and more people buy EVs, or we start to switch fleets to EVs and things like that, you may want the ability to expand your charging equipment without having to significantly rework your project. So you may want to do the electrical upgrades that may be necessary in the future to install more or larger chargers, and then only install 1 or 2 level 2 chargers right away. And then you can kind of get feedback from your employees and decide if you need more chargers right now, or if that's something that you just want it as a scalable option for the future. Next slide. All right, and then I just want to talk about a couple of pillars of success. Again, some things that are really important throughout this whole process. The strategic planning really ensures that you're aligned with your long-term goals as a company. I can't express enough how important it is to try to take everything that you can think of into account beforehand. It will make the process so smooth. Having an installer that is able to help you with that process, hiring someone, or using a program like what Brandon was talking about before this to help you get through some of these steps that you may not take into account. Effective communication is going to be huge, both within your organization and with your external partners, just to ensure that execution is nice and smooth. And then finally, you want to look at continuous improvement. So you just want to be ready to adapt and refine your approach as you learn from the experience throughout the project, but then also once the project is finished, looking at ongoing maintenance of those chargers and looking at growing adoption even in your company after that. Next slide, please. Okay, I know that I've touched on this one a lot. Some challenges and hurdles that we've noticed from companies who've installed electric vehicle equipment. A really big one is utility coordination. Every project kind of faces its share of challenges, but in our experience, this is one of the biggest hurdles that companies go through. Ensuring that your site has the electrical capacity from day one and the grid can support the added load is crucial. And then another challenge that we've noticed is securing internal buy-in. So especially in smaller organizations, there may be some resistance to what's perceived as a costly or unnecessary project. Clear communication, again, with your employees is going to be key. Here, you really want to communicate the benefits and the why behind what you're doing. Get people excited about it, post about it on your social media, make a going green section of your website that really highlights your CSR reporting or any renewable energy projects that your company might be involved in, or if you do decide to install electric vehicle equipment, you can make a blog post or make a social media post and just really keep people updated on your position and on your journey as you go. And the more and more people who see it, the more and more people who will buy into it. And then finally, don't underestimate the ongoing management of your charging stations. So from monitoring the usage of your charging to revenue collection to handling maintenance issues, just take that into account at the beginning. Next slide, please. Perfect. And I want to talk about just some lessons that we've learned to help you guys avoid some common pitfalls. Firstly, start small. So you do want to think about scalability as far as electrification and future options, but you don't want to start with a project that is incredibly unnecessarily expensive and not being used in the way that best works for your company. So you may want to start with one level 2 charger that has 2 heads, and then kind of gauge your demand, work out any kinks in your project, and you can go from there. Getting your employees engaged early. So if you're thinking about this and you're not really sure, you can send out an anonymous survey. How many of your employees actually drive EVs? How many people are thinking about driving EVs but haven't purchased one yet because they can't charge at work? Those are all things that you might want to ask your employees before you even start planning for the process. And then lastly, keep your eye out on technology. The EV landscape is evolving very quickly and very constantly, and staying informed on new technology can help you make better decisions. Next slide. Perfect. I'm not going to go into this too much. I wanted to include this in here because you guys will get a copy of this slide deck later, but there are a lot of different tax credits, utility rebates, government rebates, state and local government rebates that are available to businesses who are looking to adapt EV charging. This particular tax credit is called the 30C tax credit. There is eligibility for it all across the nation. If you go to the Department of Energy website, this is actually an eligibility locator. So you can type in the address of your business and see if it is in a section of the country that is eligible for this. If you are, the tax credit covers 30% of the project up to $30,000, and that includes the cost of the equipment and the labor costs from your installer to get the equipment installed. Next slide, please. Perfect. And then this is just kind of a case study on HiTech. Again, you don't have to read this whole thing right now. I know it's probably pretty small on your screen. I just wanted to include this so that if you wanted to look at it later, you can. We currently have 2 different locations, and we have 2 level 2 charging stations at each location. We have one at each location that is publicly accessible, and we have one that is not publicly accessible that is only for our employees. The employees are also welcome to use the publicly accessible chargers. They can still charge for free at those chargers because they are employees. But anyone who doesn't work for the company and is publicly accessible, they pay for charging, and then we collect the revenue from that. That's also kind of a great way, if you think about it, again, to be able to collect more revenue. It also will bring people to your business. You can put a lot of chargers on a map that across the country, people can look at a map and say, where's the nearest EV charger? They'll look and go, oh, there's one at such and such company, and they'll go to your company. Now they're there, they have to plug their car in for a half an hour to a couple of hours, depending on what type of charger you have. Maybe they'll stop in and say hi, who knows? We've noticed that we haven't gotten a lot of people, I wouldn't say, that stop in from it, but we have absolutely gotten a couple of people that said, oh yeah, I just, plugged my car into your charger and figured I'd stop in and see what you guys were all about. We've had some kind of cool conversations that way. So just things to think about, food for thought. And with that kind of wraps up what I had. I think we're going to open the floor for some questions here.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Brandon and Alexis, for those awesome presentations. I really appreciate how you took these programs and these processes, broke them into very navigable steps. I know that goes a long way into reducing adoption anxiety for EV and EVSE from individuals and employers. Yeah, at this point, we're going to open up to Q&A. To our audience, please feel free to put in any questions you have in the Q&A box. A lot of good questions have come in already. The first one, this is actually for both Brandon and Alexis. How can employers optimize their return on investing in workplace charging?
So let me answer. I'll start first. I think Alexis probably has more in-depth information there. But definitely, I think, maximizing this mixed use, I think is going to be a really great way to maximize this investment, right? So let's say you have a fleet, and you want to use this for both of those uses. You can use this as both a fleet charging apparatus and then also providing an apparatus for your workers to charge. Let's say that you also want to use this for workplace charging for your workers, then you want to open it up in the evenings for the public to use. That way you can maximize like your investment there. There's a number of ways to do that, but I'll let Alexa speak any more in depth about kind of ways that she's seen people maximizing this investment.
Yeah, absolutely. That Brandon, you took the words right out of my mouth essentially with the mixed use. Definitely opening up these chargers to the public and offering that to the public is a way to collect revenue right away from your chargers. We have an ROI calculator. That's kind of just a spreadsheet that is kind of a cool tool. I can send it to Christine at some point after this call so that we can get it sent out to you guys if you'd like to look at it. But it kind of can give you an idea of, this is the type of charger that I'm looking to buy, this is how much it is, and this is how many years it's going to take me to pay it off if I collect revenue from it, if I don't collect revenue from it, if I only collect revenue from it sometimes. And then also really digging into tax credits and utility rebates and taking advantage of programs that there are so many programs out there that will give you guys back money for installing these chargers. So really digging into that and taking advantage of that as well.
And one thing I wanted to add to this is kind of something that we don't always think about, right? But once you've installed these chargers, somebody has to maintain them. So if this is going to be your facilities maintenance person, if you're going to assign like a electric charging captain, for your organization, just making sure you have the right infrastructure in place to mitigate vandalism, to mitigate any kind of problems and downtime will also help you to maximize your kind of the efficiency and the investment there.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. And then another question just came in from Carly Andrus. This is also addressed to both of you. Do you have any advice about cybersecurity issues given this Internet of Things world?
So great concern, right? Like, I mean, Apple Watch, phone, your Apple tags, everything, is the Internet of Things now. In terms of the charging infrastructure, so I'll address two things. One, they have dummy chargers or unnetworked chargers if you feel like this is a major issue for you. But honestly, from most of the research we've done, from most of the people we've worked with, I don't find this to be a huge issue. Most of the major OEMs, take into consideration that there could be potential cyber threats. So they have, elements in place to kind of, mitigate this. But I haven't really seen this be a major issue in terms of cyber threats. I think honestly, you're dealing with more physical threats to anything, whether it be extreme cold or people not knowing how to maintain them or wildlife. I mean, it's an unmanned gas station. If that makes any sense, most of these, charging stations and charging apparatus aren't necessarily watched over all the time. So it's more of a physical thing. But, I really haven't seen like a threat where all the Teslas like set on fire or where they go to the charger or something. But, most of the OEMs have, or most of the manufacturers have, mechanisms in place to counteract that.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And the next question, do either of the panelists know of any hard data or studies that show how much more valuable a building will be if they have EV space ready?
I have to say, I don't necessarily have any hard data ready. That can be very dependent on the market that your business is in. However, I would say if you could send me that market, if you can send me where you are, I do have some resources that I might be able to find some data that I can send you. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, Alexis said it best. Like, I don't know exactly. That's great information. I'd love to have that too. I don't know anything off the top of my head, but we do have partners like Fourth, CalSTART that do work on that kind of data. So let us know if you have that specific question. Please give us some more insight, and we'll try to research and help you out.
Terrific. And then the next question for the both of you, how do you estimate the appropriate number of chargers for a workplace based on employee demand?
Yeah, I can kind of take that one first. So this is where getting employee involvement really early on in your process is going to be super important. One really easy way to do that is to send out a survey, whether you want it to be anonymous or not, and ask your employees, how many of you drive electric vehicles? How many of you would like to drive an electric vehicle, but there are barriers in your way? What are those barriers in your way? If you were offered a fleet vehicle that were electric, would that make you comfortable or uncomfortable? Why? Really digging into kind of what your employees already have and really what their plans are for the future will give you an idea off the bat how many of them are looking for chargers, right? And then I would say at that point, a pretty good rule of thumb, depending on your company and depending on the size and where you are, I would say you want 2 ports or 1 charger that has a dual port for about every 4 employees that you have. This again will depend on if you are only purchasing level 2 chargers. Those chargers can take 4 to 8 hours to charge a single vehicle. So if that is the charger that you're installing, you may want 1 port for every employee who drives a vehicle because they might be plugged in the whole time that they're at work, versus installing like a DC fast charger that will charge a car in anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour and a half. At that point, you could then install 1 port for every probably 4 employees, right? Because you can probably have 4 employees kind of go in and out of that charger throughout the day and be able to fully charge their car before they go home. I also would say that collaboration with your utility company, again, they can help you with that a ton. They can tell you how much service you have and how many chargers you even could put on your property, period. And organizations like the Electrification Coalition, the Drive Clean Cities, Fourth, there are lots of resources out there for you guys that will really help break it down specifically for your company and your needs.
Yep, I don't have much to add to what Alexis said. Thank you, Alexis. That was a perfect way to give you the tools that Alexis was talking about. So the Charge at Work program will help you with that as well. Kind of like as we go through that, there's so many variables, like Alexis was describing, that answer could really differ. There's fleet charging, and if you have a couple of DC fast chargers, you might only need those 2. So there's a lot of variables, but in these programs, we can help you answer those questions. But I love the rule of thumb, like 1 to every 4 employees, 1 charging station with 2 ports to every 4 employees, that you would have electric vehicles. I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb for like level 2 charging. But yeah, if you have that specific question, let one of us know, and we can try to answer more specifically for your particular situation.
I agree. That sounds like a terrific rule. The next question is for you, Alexis. How are emissions from workplace charging considered under the greenhouse gases protocol? I would like to understand how workplace charging emissions are categorized as compared to emissions from commuting in internal combustion engine vehicles.
Yeah, absolutely. So emissions from ICE vehicles, right, are going to fall under your scope 1 emissions. Those are going to be fuel emissions that are directly burned by your company vehicles or your machinery. That can also be emissions from manufacturing processes or emissions from like refrigerant leaks or things like that. And then the scope 2 emissions are going to be your kind of more indirect emissions, which would be your purchased electricity, steam, heat, or cooling. So emissions from workplace charging are going to fall under scope 2. However, I'm not going to say all, but most software options that come on these chargers will tell you exactly how many kilowatt hours that charger has used for the year, which then can tell you how many vehicles how many miles, a vehicle that was plugged into that charger may have gone. And then you can compare that to this driver drove this many vehicles and it would have been this many scope 1 emissions because of the fuel that we burned, but we really only had this many scope 2 emissions and we saved our emissions by this much because of the difference that it made.
I appreciate that answer. And then this next question is also geared towards you, Alexis. For small organizations or enterprises who may not have a person to take this on and oversee the program management aspect, what would you recommend they do?
Sure. I definitely would say that would be the case where use your resources, right? If you don't have a champion, there are people who will be your champion. Brandon's probably a great example. A lot of people from the workplace charging program, also your installer, we're willing to help. We have a lot of knowledge. We've actually, we get our hands dirty. We're elbow deep in this stuff all day, every day. And if you find a good installer, most qualified electricians, I would say at this point, have probably installed an electric vehicle charger. And we're more than willing to help you guys through the process. But there are a lot of people before we get involved that are also willing to help you guys with the process.
And then to kind of bounce off of that, Alexis, what strategies can smaller employers use to make EVSE deployment more affordable?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say a big one, again, would be transitioning and doing kind of a mixed use of the chargers. So maybe during the day while your employees are there, they're only accessible to your employees, but then you open it up for public use. And when you can collect revenue from those chargers, it makes the return on your investment so much quicker. And again, the other thing that I would say is really digging deep into rebates and tax credits and things like that. Again, the workplace charging program is a great resource to help you guys do that. There are also like the Electrification Coalition and the Clean Cities programs, and every kind of state and city has their own little part of that, really. But if you go to either the EGLE website, EGLE, they have a lot of resources on there, and there are nonprofits in pretty much every state who will help you identify the rebates and the credits that you guys are eligible for.
Thank you for that. And then this next question is for both of you. What is the difference between or the benefits of each in selecting an electrician as an installer versus a larger company like a ChargePoint for workplace charging installations?
Honestly, I think that really depends on the scope of your project, right? So I'm getting a charger installed now at my house. I'm gonna hire just the cheapest electrician I can, because like Alexis was saying, like most qualified electricians at this point have installed like home charging or basic charging. So if you're a small mom and pop shop and you're looking to get like a couple of wall chargers on your back wall in your back parking lot, you can probably go with an electrician compared to maybe one of the larger companies that would need to install 20 chargers with trench shoring and digging up your entire parking lot. I really think it depends on the scope of your project. Alexis, I don't know if you have any other factors there that would kind of determine who you would want to go with.
No, I mean, absolutely. That's probably the biggest one is just if you're installing a couple of, like you said, wall chargers, your average electrician is probably going to be okay. If you have a very large scoped project, there are definitely electricians out there who can handle and are more than willing to handle and help with those types of projects. But bringing a larger company like ChargePoint in, they kind of give you what's called a turnkey solution, which at that point, it's part of their job to help you identify the installer that's right for you.
Yeah, and to go off of Alexis, you bring up a good point there with that turnkey solution. Again, depending on who you are, if you're trying to make profit off of this, if you're trying to just have a simple operation for your employees, those organizations with those turnkey solutions can provide you, what you're looking for. There's even some organizations that provide infrastructure as a service where they'll essentially eliminate that upfront cost for you, and then you'll have like kind of a pay for the service model throughout the months or whatever the situation may be. So a lot of like, let's say schools, if you're in elementary school, you're not necessarily trying to make profit off of this. You want to eliminate a lot of that upfront cost, and then you just want to have this amenity available for your employees and whoever else. So there are some different ways to kind of look at that. But again, if you have specific questions kind of about your scope, let us know, and we can definitely tell you if you can go with like somebody that's a relatively inexpensive, or if it's worth kind of bringing in a full scale turnkey solution.
Thank you both so much for those answers. I believe we have time for just one more question. Jeff Puckett from FC Moves asked, in your experience, what municipal or county level incentives or offerings have made electrification the easiest?
Definitely, if you can get anything. Oh, sorry.
That's okay, Brandon. All I was going to say is, in my experience, I'm from Michigan. I know that we're kind of from all over the place on this call, so it really depends on the jurisdiction that you're in. But I would say the kind of low-hanging fruit, or the money that's probably the easiest to go after, is the money that your utility companies are offering in rebates. Go ahead, Brandon.
No, 100% agreed. Definitely from the utilities. I mean, that's kind of the biggest game changer, and they're obviously intimately involved with this. So there's a lot of programs depending on where you live. There's like a lot of incentives. Obviously, you can get on like the federal level, and then you'll see like private incentives coming out. And again, I think that infrastructure for us as a service is a really great concept for a lot of people, because it eliminates that barrier of entry that we see for probably 80% of people trying to do this, is that upfront cost. So there's some ways to get around this.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. I guess at this point, let's move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, so thank you all so much for attending, and thank you both, Brandon and Alexis, for answering all those questions and going in depth on your workplace charging programs and your processes. The next webinar will be for small businesses, I believe. Oh no, sorry, it'll be workplace charging for governments on September 12th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern time. And yeah, thank you all so much for this phenomenal webinar. The emails of both of our panelists are here below. I'm also available to answer any questions you might have about the EVAL program. But without further ado, thank you all so much for your time and for making this webinar great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your day.